I've just finished testing the Mammotion Luba 2 all-wheel drive robot lawnmower on my own challenging lawn, and this video shares all the details of my experience. The Luba 2 AWD is a high-end, all-wheel drive robotic mower that doesn't need boundary wires. It uses RTK and GPS for advanced navigation. In this in-depth review, I cover the setup and mapping process, including how I use its base station and the app to map multiple zones in my yard, and how it performed on slopes and even uneven terrain. I'll also share some honest observations. Finally, I'll give you my thoughts on who will benefit most from the Luba 2 AWD, especially if you have a hilly or complex lawn. For the past few months, I've been testing the Mammotion Luba 2 AWD robotic mower. And let me tell you, this thing has been mowing parts of my yard that even I dread to cut with a push mower. I have a pretty typical suburban yard with a fenced-in back area, some garden beds, a tree, sloped hills on the side. Setting up the Luba 2 was relatively straightforward, especially compared to something like the Yarbo I reviewed earlier. It also uses a wire-free system. No boundary wires needed, relying on a combination of an RTK GPS base station and what they call a V-Fence visual system to define boundaries. In the box, I had the mower itself, a charging station, and a small GPS base/antenna. I placed the base station on a post at about shoulder height in my yard to get a clear view, similar to other RTK systems, and I paired it with the mower through the Mammotion app. Once everything was powered on and connected, mapping the yard was next. Using the app, I drove the Luba 2 around the perimeter of my lawn areas, kind of like painting the boundary on a map. I have two main zones, a front and backyard, which is separated by a fence and gate. I mapped each area and then also mapped a narrow corridor along the side of my house so that the mower can move between the front and the back. The app let me set up distinct zones and even labeled them. I aptly named them front lawn and backyard. For each zone, I also drew virtual no-go zones around some flower beds, and this process was pretty intuitive in the app. I could adjust the lines even after driving to clear up any wobbles. The Luba's manufacturer claims something like 17 minutes setup and marketing, but realistically, to optimize everything and really get it right, I spent a couple hours over a couple evenings tweaking the map. And I'm glad I did. A good initial mapping meant that the mower didn't get confused or go somewhere it shouldn't. Right from the first mow, I was struck by how precise and methodical the Luba 2 is. It's almost eerily precise. It drives out and traces the perimeter of the zone, and then it mows in neat parallel lines inside that boundary. The lines were unswervingly straight, almost like it had put down guide ropes or something. It didn't. The GPS guidance is that good. Each pass overlapped the last just enough to ensure full coverage. The mower's path planning was efficient. It didn't randomly crisscross or revisit the same area unnecessarily. Over the course of a week, it managed to cover my entire yard section by section. What's cool is that each mowing session, it alternated mowing direction. One time it would do stripes, the next time it would be diagonally, and that's by design. Alternating the pattern helps avoid creating permanent wheel tracks or ruts in your yard. Let's talk about the big claim, slope handling. Our house is a walkout. That means the basement is at a lower level than the front of the house, and so on the side of the house, we have a hill. Watching the Luba 2 mow that slope was pretty impressive. It went straight up without a slip. Even turning on the hill was handled gracefully. And yes, it truly can handle near 40-degree slopes as long as the grass is there to provide some grip. That puts it in the league of very few mowers. The Luba 2 all-wheel drive does have obstacle avoidance sensors. It actually has what looks like a little camera in the sensor array up front. And in my testing, it seemed to work pretty darn well. Anytime the Luba recognized something that was there, it would slow down, either gently bumping it or just stopping short and rerouting. It's not as sophisticated as object recognition as something like the Yarbo or the Equavax Goat with full AI cameras, but it does the job for most things. With a good Wi-Fi connection, through the app you can actually do a first-person view from the mower's front camera. It's not a high-res video or anything, it's more like snapshots, but it's still pretty cool to see what the robot sees. I used this a couple of times when I got alerts that it was paused. I looked and I realized that it just was stuck on the edge of the landscaping, and so I just drove it backwards and drove it forward again, and that was fine. So how did it do on edges? Well, like most robot mowers, you'll need to do a bit of manual edging. The Luba 2 got fairly close to edges. Since I could map the boundary exactly along my fence and patios, it tried to cover everything up to those lines. There's always a safety margin, so it left maybe 2 to 3 inch strip along the barriers like my fence and house wall that it couldn't cut. Mammotion doesn't have a side trimmer attachment or anything like that, so I did spend about 15 minutes every week or so weed whacking those areas. This isn't a knock on Luba specifically. Practically every mower has the same issue unless you get one with a special edge mode or trimmer. Luba does have a edge cut mode in the app, which makes it do a perimeter run cutting a little beyond its normal area over by my patio. Obviously, it's not going to work with the fence as it is a physical barrier. The Luba 2 proved to be extremely low maintenance and reliable. Let's start with noise. It's unbelievably quiet. I mean, I knew electric mowers are quieter than gas, but this is on another level. Standing 15 feet away, I mostly heard the faint whir of blades and some wheel motor noise when it was climbing. I actually found myself checking in to see if it was going because you can't hear it. That's fantastic because it meant I could run it early in the morning without waking anyone. I even set it to mow at 7 a.m. a couple of times, and no complaint from the family or neighbors. The battery life on my unit was around 90 to 100 minutes per charge. It automatically returns to charge when it's low, which takes about 2 hours to fully juice up. In practical terms, to mow my yard effectively, it split the job into 2 segments over a day. It had plenty of battery life to do my entire yard as well as my neighbors, with only going back to recharge once or twice. During the time that I tested this mower, nothing broke or needed to be fixed. After around 60 days, I inspected the blades, and they were still quite sharp, thanks in part to the multi-blade setup that shares the work. I'll probably sharpen them or swap them out at the 3 to 4 month mark. I did do some routine cleaning. Every week or so, I'd prop the mower up and just rinse off the underside. It accumulates some grass clippings, particularly if the grass was a bit damp. The cutting deck has a good clearance though, and it doesn't get clogged. So who needs a Luba 2? After months of testing, I can confidently say that the Luba 2 all-wheel drive delivered on its promises for me. My lawn, which is by no means easy, has been consistently cut and looks like it's the best it's looked in years, all with very minimal effort on my part. So who is the mower best for? If you have a lawn with significant hills or multiple zones, the Luba 2 all-wheel drive is a dream come true. It's specifically great for those of us with, say, hilly backyards, terrace lawns, or yard splits into front and back and side sections, and you want one robot to manage it seamlessly. Because it's wire-free, if you hate the idea of burying wires or have a yard where doing so would be impractical, the Luba fits the bill. It's also ideal if you're a bit of a lawn perfectionist. This thing cuts with amazing precision and consistency, leaving a finish as good as a human mowing carefully with a sharp blade. And it's quiet and autonomous. I found myself actually enjoying watching it work while I sip coffee instead of pushing a mower myself. Now this is a premium product, so it is an investment, probably for someone who either really values their time or physically has trouble mowing. In conclusion, the Mammotion Luba 2 all-wheel drive impressed me and made my lawn care nearly hands-free. It's not 100% zero effort. I did still have to go back and do the edges and spend some time upfront mapping, but compared to manually mowing, it's a night and day difference in workload. If you match the profile I described and you desire a high-tech solution, the Luba 2 should be high on your list. I hope it gave you a clear picture of what the Luba 2 all-wheel drive is capable of.